I don't
You don't look like you feel bad.
Okay, I'm used to waking up like quite early. In South Africa, people do wake up generally very early.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So now we are live on Facebook. Let's start. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 5th episode of our Knowledge Fishing Talk Show. My name is Con Ling. You can call me Ling, and I will be your moderator throughout this session. Today, our guest speaker will tell us about the transportation system in their respective countries, and we will see some comparison between them. Hello, Zeldin, who is joining all the way from South Africa, and
Hello.
Micah, who is from the US, but he lives in Cambodia, right? And welcome, and thank you so much for joining with us today. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Not bad. No complaints.
Okay. So I would like to start by asking, what is the main transportation system in South Africa and in the US? I know that US is a big one, so that might be different, right? In each state. So can you guys tell us what you know?
Yes, so South Africa, we have a very different transportation system compared to a lot of other countries, especially for the countries that I've lived in. So we do mainly have taxis. Now, these taxis are not what you guys are used to. It's basically a minibus. And for that minibus, you pay something about the equivalent of $1, and it'll take you wherever you decide to go. Now, every destination in South Africa has its own hand signal. So you'll be standing at the side of the road or at a taxi rank, and you'll show like the respective hand signal, like your fingers up or something like that, and that'll indicate where you're trying to go. And that taxi will pick you up alongside with other people and then drop you in that respective area. That is our main transportation. But aside from that, a lot of people choose to drive or just walk if it's not too far.
Interesting.
Especially those hand signals. I've never heard of anyone doing that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. There are so many ones that you have to learn. And I looked at a diagram recently that showed all the different ones. And I don't know how people keep up with it or how they remember everything. It's very complicated.
Sounds like fun. So a form of hand signals to get around. That's cool. Makes it easy for the drivers too. I assume they see, oh, that guy's signaling, go there. I'm not going that way. Just drive past
yeah,
him.
then they drive past. And I guess in the streets, they kind of honk everywhere. And that's your kind of to wake you up. See, like if you want to go there, they'll stop and pick you up wherever you are, in the middle of the road, on the side of the road, blocking you, wherever.
In the US, it's a bit different. We usually get around by car. And if you're in the big city, it really depends where you are, but I'm from Oregon, and in Oregon, it's usually rainy weather, so it's not nice to walk around. So walking is not a common way of getting around. We prefer to get around by cars, and motorcycles are also not a common way to get around because of the bad weather. No one wants to drive their motorcycle in the rain because then you just get there wet and sad. So cars is the most common way of getting around. There's also bus systems in Oregon. However, I would say the most common way is by car. If you're in the bigger cities like New York City, then the weather's colder but not rainy, so walking is optional. And a lot of people will take a bus or the subway system out 1 hour into the city and then walk to their workplace. So there's many different ways to get around depending where you are in the US. I know in California, where I lived for a couple of years, a common way to get around is by car or by walking or bicycling. Bicycling is pretty big in California because the weather's always nice and there's lots of bike trails around. So people will ride bikes to get from place to place.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So is it the same for like everywhere in South Africa, or do you have a difference between the depending on the province or cities like the US?
Yes, I would say everywhere in South Africa is very much the same. Mainly taxi rank. You might walk to the taxi rank, or you might walk somewhere nearby, or you drive yourself. We don't really have a lot of cycling. Cycling is mainly just as a sport. People don't really use cycling as a form of transportation. And we don't really have other forms of taxis except Ubers, but they're quite expensive and they're not as common as you see them in other countries.
Mhm.
Mm.
Do they have motorcycles like they do? Do they have motorcycles in South Africa? Like
They have a lot of
the mopeds?
private motorcycles. No, we don't have that in South Africa. It's not a very common thing to see a motorcycle, except for someone who's like riding a maybe Harley Davidson, or someone who's into racing.
Mm.
So you won't really get onto someone's motorcycle. What about in America? Do they have something similar to that?
Yeah, it's similar. Not very much. When you see motorcycle drivers in America, it's rare, and it's more interesting when you see one. You don't see too many of them, but every once in a while you'll see like the gang of Harley Davidson guys. You know,
Yeah.
their black vests driving around. There's like 6 of them in a row, and everyone likes seeing that. It's interesting because motorcycle drivers in the U.S. They use hand signals to wave to each other. Also, when they're passing by, they don't go like this. They put their hand down at their side and just put it there, and then that's like signaling to another motorcycle driver, like, "Yo, you're cool." Also.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
Unlike in Cambodia, where everyone, 60% of the population or 70% of the population is all on motorcycles. Nothing
Yeah.
cool about that.
Do you think that your transportation system in your country is effective or convenient? Is it effective for the public? Is it convenient for the public?
I think for South Africa, it is very effective and it's quite convenient because, like I mentioned, it is very cheap. So it's approximately 20 Rand, which is near to $1. And the minimum wage in South Africa is around 300 Rand per day. So that's about $10. So it is quite fairly cheap, and it is fairly effective because you get taxi ranks almost everywhere. So at every shopping center, there will be a designated taxi rank, or just in certain open spaces as well. So from my house, there is a fairly large taxi rank less than 1 kilometer away. And people choose to walk there. And it's fairly open, a lot of different taxis. So wherever you want to go, you will find a taxi that can take you there.
It's nice. In the US, I guess that it's fairly convenient because everyone has their own car, so it's easy to get around. But the only problem with that is more cars equals more traffic. So if you get into the bigger cities like LA and you leave right after work, you're going to be stuck in traffic for 2 hours, 3 hours. It's horrible traffic. So that's why other people switch to options such as taking a bicycle or taking public transportation when they can. And same in New York, driving your own car is not that convenient because there's so many people. It's so dense that taking a car is just not the convenient way. You can take a taxi, take a walk, or take a subway. You'll probably get there faster than if you drive your own car. In Oregon, though, where the population is not so dense, driving your car is the best way to get around. Traffic's not bad because there's less people, so it's the most convenient way to get around it.
Yeah. And I've heard in America that most people start getting a car around the age of 16, or at least get a license around the age of 16. So I think that gives people a lot more freedom. but also, like you mentioned, puts a lot more cars on the road and a lot more traffic.
Or
Not good.
danger too.
Yeah, so
Very dangerous.
16 or 18, so you can start getting your they call it a driver's permit. You can get your driver's permit at 16, but you can't have your driver's license until you're 18. So 16 young kids can start driving, but they need an adult in the car in order to be able to drive. They can't just drive by themselves. 18, no, 21. 18 to 21 is when they can actually start driving by themselves.
Okay, interesting.
So if most kids get their cars by that age, it depends on the parents if they want to give them a car or not. But they can start driving, so watch out.
What about in South Africa? Is it common for like high school students to drive around with their own car to school or?
No, not really. Usually you get a license around the age of 18. And I did go to one school. I did complete my high school education in South Africa. And most of my friends were a bit older than me. So when I was 16, they were around 18, 19. And a lot of them did start bringing their cars to school. But it's not really something you see very often in a regular high school or a public high school because cars are quite expensive and I guess people just prefer to have their parents drop them off as well. Less stress for them. They don't have to rush as much in the mornings and you can sit in the back, do your makeup in the car. What I used to do. But yeah, so around 18, you might start getting a car, or you might kind of just wait until you want to go to university and your parents can't drop you that anymore.
Yeah, I would say it's somewhat similar in the US when you get your own start driving by yourself when you're going to university and all that.
Interesting. A lot of similarities and a lot of very severe differences as well between the two countries so far.
Yeah. So which city are you from? Are you guys from? Like in South Africa?
Me, I am from Centurion, and that is basically right between Johannesburg and Pretoria. You probably won't know it.
Yeah. Is it like, which one is the capital?
We have 3 capitals in South Africa. So it's Pretoria is one of the capitals. Then we have Bloemfontein and I think Cape Town as well.
Oh, yeah. It's quite popular, Cape Town.
Yeah, Cape Town is the most well-known one, actually. Lots of tourists.
You said you had 3 capitals?
Yes, 3 capitals.
Yeah, what? 3 capitals?
3 capitals. It's very rare for a country to have that, and apparently it's also very expensive to have 3 capitals.
Yeah, of course.
Odd, right?
I'm just from a small town in Oregon, Harrisburg. No one would know it.
But
I know Oregon, but
yeah, I'm Oregon, but I don't know the city as well.
Yeah,
but what is the
no one does.
capital of Oregon?
The capital of Oregon is Portland.
Oh,
Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
More people would know Portland.
And yeah. I just watched the movie on the show the other day, and it was like it was about an island near Portland, and where human trafficking happened between Canada and the US. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Oregon's very cold and wet. Yeah.
Doesn't sound that appealing.
It doesn't.
I don't like the cold.
No. Most people that live in Oregon and then they go over to go live in a different state, California, for example, they find that when they move to the new state, their mood changes.
Mm.
Like they have depression in there, then they move to a new state. It cures it suddenly because new weather. It's amazing how the weather actually affects your mindset. And when you're
Interesting.
in a state that's constantly, like I'm saying, 90% of the time it's clouds and 80% of the time is drizzling a little bit of rain, then it's quite dreary. But the scenery there is beautiful. It's gorgeous. Everything is green and luscious. We have beautiful lakes and mountains.
I can imagine.
So what, from what I heard, Zedline probably definitely take public transportation. What influenced you to take public transportation?
Well, I do not take the taxis in South Africa, but I have taken an Uber before in South Africa. And most of the other time, either my parents drive me around or my friends that have cars. So my friend recently got her license the other day and she wanted to take me out for lunch. So she picked me up. But Uber, what influences me to take Uber or public transportation like that would be if I have to go somewhere and our car is broken, or if I'm going somewhere that is quite far with a trusted family member, because Uber in South Africa is not very safe. And as you are aware, South Africa does have a lot of problem with crime, unfortunately. So, especially as a young woman, it is not easy to take Uber on your own. And it is not suggested to take Uber on your own.
I see.
Yeah.
For the US, what influences us was just the common way. Cars are not that expensive in the US. They're fairly cheap. It's, for example, cars are quite expensive here in Cambodia. You can buy a car $10,000 here, but the same car would only cost about $6,000 back in the US. So cars are much cheaper back in the US. So it's quite common. It's like, okay, get a car, and if you're not very rich and you get a secondhand car for like $2,000, $1,000, it's like, okay, you get that and drive that around until it breaks.
That's very cheap. I've seen a lot of, I guess, memes about like, oh, when your $200 car crashes into the $50,000 car, but your car takes no damage.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
can you really get cars for like $200 there, or is that kind of just exaggerated?
No, you can get cars very, very cheap. You can get cars for 500. It's the
Wow.
old cars are not nice. Don't be expecting nice cars, but you
Yeah.
can get a car that's dirt cheap for that price. And yeah, it'll somehow get you from point A to point B.
Slowly, might crash, car might break, but you'll get there eventually. You know.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah,
But
that's
car, like you have to take car insurance or stuff like that too, right?
that is true. That also depends on the state, on which state you are, I believe. I've never owned a car in the US, so it's difficult for me to say, but I would say it depends on the state, because each state has their own laws and their own rules. And so some maybe you don't, some you do. But in general, I believe that you need to have insurance in order to drive your car, because otherwise you bump into someone, you hit somebody, and then you have nothing to pay. So usually, especially in California, I know California, you do have to have that insurance. You can get in big trouble if you don't. But I can't say for the other states, because America's so big, whereas the laws are totally different from one state to a different state.
Very confusing though, you know, that every state has their own set of laws and very different laws as well from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So if you want to go to a different state, you need to learn the laws of that state.
So it's like moving to a different country, right?
Similar, very similar. Most people will stay inside their state and never leave their state, because the states are already, your own state is already pretty big. You lots to do in there. Some people just live in their own state their entire lives and never leave it.
Scary.
I mean, you don't have to show like an ID card or anything to go to another state. You can just drive there and do whatever you want over there. But just people just don't because various reasons.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Because you guys have a very different system from my country. So it's very different. From where I can tell you about my country as well. I'm from Myanmar, right? So in Myanmar, it's like only the major city, like the biggest city, it's that they have public transportation. Other than that, we don't have any public transportation at all. So which is weird. Like people mostly use motorcycle, bicycle, and tricycle in other parts of the country, except the big city.
Mm. So similar to Cambodia.
Yeah. And then Thailand, of course. So Ling and I were in Thailand together, and it's very interesting to see how different Thailand is like compared to other countries, but how similar it is to the rest of Asia. I like your cat, by the way. But yeah, it's very fascinating. Like so many motorcycles, tuk-tuk sometimes. And when I went to Vietnam once, like it was shocking to see just how many motorcycles there really, really were.
Yeah. I think it's the same for Cambodia, right? Similar to Vietnam in Cambodia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Similar. Very similar. One difference from Vietnam and Cambodia is to get around to Vietnam, they don't have as many tuk-tuks like we have tuk-tuks here in Cambodia. In Vietnam, they have Grab motorcycle drivers. So you get on the back of a moped, which Cambodia used to have. We used to have a lot of those, but for some reason, I don't know why, we switched to tuk-tuk, and now mostly everyone gets around by tuk-tuk. But whereas in Vietnam, they still get around by getting on the back of a motorcycle instead. And the motorcycle drivers in Vietnam, I think it's Grab also in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Grab company, and they wear the uniform, so you can easily tell, oh, that's a motorcycle driver. Whereas in Cambodia, the motorcycle drivers, they don't wear any uniform, they just dress, and you kind of have to guess if that person's a motorcycle driver. Like, are you a motorcycle driver? Raise your hand, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm just sitting here, man. Or if you're lucky, you get a motorcycle driver. But like I said, that's not so common in Cambodia. Now it's mostly tuk-tuks.
Wonder why.
I think it's the gas. I think because there was the tuk-tuk that was pulled by the motorcycle with like the carriage in the back, and then they recently switched over to the what do we call it? The gas. It's kind of like the gas they use for the oven. Propane. I think maybe it's propane. But anyways, that gas is cheaper than regular gas that you would get at the gas station. So I think that because it's cheaper, that's why they all switched over. They can save more money and still get around. I mean, they don't need to drive fast. So yeah, that's why I think they switched.
Most likely, yeah.
And I think they're more comfortable, nicer. They still have the other tuk-tuks. They're just becoming much, much less common.
Okay. So from where Micah is from, I heard, like you said, you don't have much traffic in your city because it's a small town.
Yeah.
Right? What about in South Africa?
So right now, because of COVID, there are a lot of less cars, a lot less taxis on the road. But since things are kind of slowly going back to normal, now people are going back to the 9 to 6 hour work week, and traffic is now getting worse again. So it's not really bad regularly, but during rush hour, so anytime between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning, it is awful. And then anytime around 2 p.m. when the schools come out, traffic is also very bad. And then about 4 to 6 p.m. traffic is also really, really bad here. But it's not as bad as like Thailand traffic. It's just specifically for 1 hour at a time until the people from that batch have finished and arrived home.
I see. Yeah, that's what it is in Cambodia as well. Those certain times, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, stay off the road. Or go sit in a coffee shop for a couple hours until it dies down.
You'll be a lot more relaxed.
Yeah. And similar to the US as well, you got that really, really bad traffic in California. So if you know that you're gonna get stuck in it, it's better just pull over and go do something. Or a lot of people, they just sit in the traffic and then they'll turn on their audiobooks or listen to something in the car, do some work even while they're sitting in the traffic because the traffic's going nowhere. But you're in your own car, so you have all your own stuff that you can do. And a lot of people get a lot of work done while they're. Podcasts in the US have blown up where a lot of people are listening to podcasts, audiobooks much more than before.
That's smart. That's very smart. To like have your time do that. I find it very difficult to listen to a podcast because I never have time. But now when I'm stuck in traffic, maybe I can try that.
Yeah. It's a good way to get some extra learning in or just have some
fun. And there's some very good podcasts right now.
There's millions to choose from.
It's a good industry.
It is a very good industry.
So sorry, I didn't get it. Like, do they have a public transportation system in California?
They do. They have a bus system. They do not have a subway system though. They have a subway system in New York, but they don't have a subway system in California that I know of. It's bus or usually car or bicycle. Those are the main ways. And walking sometimes also.
Okay.
I don't know how common the bus is. I don't hear about many people taking a bus, but there is a bus. There is a bus system that people use. But yeah, it runs in a loop. And California, well, depending on, I'm thinking of LA specifically. There's a lot of big cities in California. I think of LA specifically. It runs in a loop, so you have to plan to get on this bus and then get off and then get on this other bus and then get off and then get on this other bus in order to get to point A, because each bus has a certain route and they only go that route. They don't take you where you want to go. They just follow this pattern. And so you go to this one, but you get off at this stop, get onto one more bus, go to another stop. Similar to the transportation system in Singapore as well. There's buses and you just get on one, go there, get on another one.
Yeah, I saw that like they have bus in Cambodia as well, but no one is taking it, right?
Yeah, there are buses in Cambodia. Yeah, they even have the bus stops and all that painted, and they're trying to introduce it, but like you said, it hasn't been overly successful. Mostly because they don't have that many buses. You have to wait a long time for the buses. But I do see people waiting at the bus stops to get on them and use them. They're just not that common yet. Well, excited to see the public transportation system in Cambodia sometime soon, especially in Phnom Penh as the traffic gets worse and worse every year. They need to introduce something so that people can get off the motorcycles and the cars. And, yeah.
Is it comfortable and safe to walk around the city that you live in?
Me or Micah?
Both of you.
Not really, no. Unfortunately, South Africa, it's not necessarily very safe to walk around, but you still do get a lot of people who, I guess, know what to do, like where to walk, what to avoid, stuff like that. Because like I mentioned, people do walk a lot to the taxi ranks, and we do have a train system called the Gautrain, but it's not very widely used because it is very expensive actually. But some people do prefer to park their car at the train station and then take the train further on into work or into a specific area. But it is also fairly, it has experienced power outages and it has experienced some other issues as well in the past.
Interesting. So they drive and keep their car at the train station and they drive on from the train station.
Yeah, but parking is also very expensive there.
So it's not ideal.
Not necessarily. It's for, I guess, more people that like live in Pretoria and they want to like go to Johannesburg for their work instead of driving the 1 hour, 2 hour drive. They would rather take a 40-minute train.
Oh,
So
Yeah,
they go and walk in a different city every
Yes,
day.
that's actually quite common in South Africa.
Interesting.
Mm.
What about in the Oregon and California?
what was the question again?
Like, is it comfortable and safe to walk around in your city?
Oh, yes, I would say daytime, no problem. It's totally safe. We can walk around. Yeah. Nighttime, I believe it's mostly safe. I'd say it's 80% safe. There's always little areas that you should always be careful of. Like everyone knows, oh, this area is probably not that good. A lot of hoodlums or young kids hang out over there. It's probably just best to avoid that area. Same as I think that's pretty common in most cities. There's areas where it's less safe, but overall, I would say it's fairly safe to walk around. But you don't usually see too many people walking around that late at night, around 10 o'clock or something like that. It's gets pretty quiet.
Oh.
You can still see some people, and when you see people, it's fine. They're usually pretty nice. New York might be less safe. Yeah, I would say New York is less safe, but it's also the city that never sleeps, and so there's people walking around at all hours. So you can anytime going out, there's going to be people running around doing this or that. California would be LA specifically would be less so. I would say there are people who go out late, but it's less common. LA is quite more spread out, not really concentrated like New York. New York's a lot of people in a small area. LA's a large amount of people, but spread out over a larger area. So I would say at nighttime, less people, but still fairly safe again, depending on the locations that you're walking. There are some neighborhoods that have like drug addicts and stuff like that, and then want to avoid those areas.
What about the sense of distance? Like, for example, in the US, since some people walk around, they might like walk far, but still feel that the distance is shorter. Do you have that type of thing in South Africa as well?
Not necessarily. You don't really walk unless it's unless you really have to, like if public transportation is too expensive for you, or public transportation will not take you to that destination. And here it's common to walk, I guess, anytime between maybe like 5 a.m. and say 8 p.m. Anytime after that or before that, it gets a little suspicious. You don't really see anyone at in the roads at night walking, and you don't really see a lot of cars at night either. The only people you will see at night will be like teenagers or like people in the early 20s going clubbing or going to fancy restaurants and like drinking there. But walking only really to get from point A to point B if that's your only option. Because of the safety, of course. And a lot of the street lights are out. So it's quite dark at night to walk and to drive as well.
The street lights are out as in broken, or they just turn them off.
Bit of everything. Sometimes they forget to turn them on. Sometimes they're broken. Sometimes the cables have been stolen. Sometimes the grid just doesn't work. So we live in a closed off street, like a security street, and in the street. And sometimes we walk our dog, like just when it starts to get a bit dark. And we'll see that sometimes the streetlights are on, or they might be off in a random area, or they'll be on during the day and then they'll be off at night. So it's very confusing, but it is very hard to drive at night if these streetlights are off because you cannot see.
Mhm.
So best to avoid walking late at night as well.
Mm. So we have some question from our audience. They ask how to encourage people to use more public transportation, especially in Asia, like where like Cambodia or Vietnam, where people don't really use public transportation.
I would say you have to make it cheap and affordable and convenient. If it's convenient, people will use it. If it's cheap, not too cheap, obviously, but because then they won't be able to afford it. But not the government won't be able to support it, I would say. Higher quality. I would say make it cheap and convenient. Main thing being convenient. Like in Singapore, the subway system is super convenient. Nearly everyone takes the subway system because it's very well designed and you can get to wherever you want faster than it would be to get on your motorcycle. So your public transportation system would have to be a better alternative to them using their motorcycle, because if you can take your motorcycle and get somewhere in 15 minutes, why would they take the bus and get there in 30 minutes? It doesn't make any sense. And you have to pay extra for it. So I would say convenience is probably the most important, in my opinion. If they can make it convenient, then people will use it because people value their time.
I agree with that. Also, the Singapore MRT system is very nice, and I'm very mad because I lived in Singapore for 4 years and I only learned how to take the MRT in my last month there. So I missed out on all that convenience. But agree with the convenience. So like see what the market wants. If there's a lot of motorcycles in, say, Vietnam, because it's easier to take or cheaper than a car, people might be used to that. So introducing motorcycle taxis. I know there's Grab that has motorcycle taxis, Gojek as well, which is fairly new, I believe from Indonesia. And see what the market wants, what they want to take, how they would like to take it, and of course, make it as affordable as possible. Because as we like in South Africa, we have the taxis, which are very affordable. They're $1 to get on like a minibus, but then the Gautrain, which can be like $5 or like $6. And if you're making $10 a day, then that's not going to be affordable for you at all.
So another question is, since the system is so different between your own countries and the Asia country that you have lived in, did you face any issue getting around when you were in Asia?
I never really had any problems in Asia. Like I said, I lived in Singapore. That was very easy, very convenient. You could also just stop a taxi on the side of the road and say, hey, I want to go here. And they would take you there. Thailand, I did struggle a bit with the BTS, just because I'm not very good at directions. So I did end up like going to the wrong place a few times. But you learn from mistakes like that. And then taxis also just, the only reason is because I don't speak Thai very well, and it was a bit hard for me to communicate with taxi drivers. So I would always prefer to take Grab, where everything is already like agreed upon. But that's the only issues really.
How about you for Micah in Cambodia and the US?
In Cambodia, I I take tuk-tuks or drive my car or drive my motorcycle. So I drive each one depending on the situation. So if I want to get somewhere quick and fast, then I'll just take my motorcycle because I can zip through traffic. And yeah, and I'll take the car because it adds like an extra 10-15 minutes to every single drive.
Yeah.
But you arrive there feeling fresh. So like if I'm
Yeah.
going to work, I'll usually take the car because I don't like to show up to work looking sweaty and disheveled. I want to arrive looking professional. So other times I'll take the tuk-tuk if it's just nearby and I don't want to get my car out or I don't want to get my motorcycle out. Just take a tuk-tuk real quick, like Grab's usually what I use. There's also Pass app, but Grab's
Okay.
price.
Yeah, that sounds good.
75 cents to get around most locations in Mountains. Fairly cheap.
It's a good price.
Yeah.
The
Right,
same for
right.
me. If I have to go somewhere looking pretty and nice, I will always take the car, not the or not bicycle. Yeah. And last question would be, they want to ask about navigation, like Google Maps. Is it outdated or is it easier to use in certain countries? Because we all know that sometimes Google Maps is a bit messed up.
And it works fine in the US, but there's still every once in a while Google tries to take you down the dark dirt road to somewhere, saying that this is a shortcut, and you're like, "Where are you taking me, Google?" That happens a lot in Cambodia, not as much in America, but still, you know, it's not perfect. You can still get takes you down a crazy road, and you're like, "No, Google, you're wrong. I'm going this way." Cambodia, though, it happens quite often where I'll be driving my car and then they'll say, go down this road. And then you turn down that road and it's like, can fit like 2 people wide. You can't fit a car down there. Okay, no, I'm going to go my own way now because you don't know what you're talking about. You're drunk, Google.
That's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. In Thailand, well, like when the weather is bad, Google Maps just does not work. It will take you down the wrong roads and you'll be places you've never seen before. In South Africa, a lot of people used to use like a physical GPS, not their phones. But those things stopped kind of being updated and a lot of new roads had been built. So it would take you maybe like 50 minutes to get somewhere instead of like 20 minutes now because of the new highway. But the only real problem, I've never really had issues with Google Maps, but I have had issues with data. Like data is very expensive in South Africa. And it's not always very accessible because the signal can be very, very poor. So if you want to get somewhere in South Africa, maybe have like the route downloaded on your phone, or just be sure you have enough data to get somewhere, because sometimes they do close roads randomly, or we have a lot of potholes, sometimes sinkholes. So you really want to avoid those roads.
Cambodia is similar to that, where you not that data is expensive, but rather it's different where data is hard to get sometimes. Like the signal doesn't always reach. So I go between provinces quite often. And oftentimes when I'm driving, I need to pre-download the map because as I'm driving, the signal will just drop completely for like 30 minutes or so. And then I have to wait until I get a signal again. So I hope I'm going down the right way.
Yeah, and if you go the wrong way, you're 30 minutes further than you're supposed to be. So
yeah,
very unfortunate. But
So last question from me. Do you think that the transportation are most likely to change in the future in every country, the system? Or any country?
I don't think Singapore would change particularly, but I think more countries should or would try and change to something like Singapore, where everything is very easily accessible. Like the buses work great. They drop you very close. and then the train station where the stations are very close to each other, and it gets you around like the whole country.
I think that's what they are trying to do in Thailand as well, right? They expand
Yeah,
the train line. Yeah.
they expand like a new station in Thailand, I think every 2 months or so. And it's really good because it now can like allow you to get from one point to another point a lot quicker, a lot cheaper, and a lot easier.
I don't see the transportation system changing in the US. I think most people prefer to have their own car as it's quite convenient. You can bring all your stuff in your car, and you can eat lunch in there while you're waiting, or you're basically carrying around a mobile home. I don't see it changing. I do see them adding, if they can, improving the roads and such, but not really changing the type of transportation, as I think most people would prefer to drive their own cars. In some cities, people might begin to be more conscious of climate change, etc., and then switch over to a bicycle and such, but that wouldn't really constitute a change in the public transportation. That would just their private choice to do that.
Okay, fascinating.
New York has subway systems already, so I would just say that they would need to improve those because those are already installed there. LA's quite different because it's so spread out in such a large area. Subway systems might not be a good option because it's just so far from point A to point B, unlike New York, where everything's fairly close. It's still a very large city, but it's closer. Cambodia would probably benefit, Phnom Penh would probably benefit from a subway system, as everything's not too far away. You can basically get from one side of Phnom Penh to the other side in about 20 minutes if there's no heavy traffic. So that would be convenient for them to have a subway system. If they do.
Yeah.
One mode of transportation I've always thought would be interesting is those sky carriages. You like go on and it goes over the city instead of you getting in the subway system under the city, getting one that goes over the city. I always thought those would be interesting. I don't know how effective they would be though, because
They're really effective, right? In Thailand, we use that all the time. SkyTrain. Yeah.
okay. I think those would be quite beneficial.
Yeah.
Helps a lot with the traffic, you know, like oof.
If it's convenient or it's cool and people want to take pictures, people will use it.
Yeah. True.
Okay. So do you guys have any question to ask each other?
I have one question. Actually, I had 4 questions prepared, but 3 of them we've already answered. So, is it easy to travel as a woman in America or in Cambodia? Is it easy and is it safe?
America, yeah. I would say, again, it depends on the state. I would say my home state, Harrisburg, there's no problem. You can get your own car, you can drive around. In California, again, no problem. Just be aware of the time and the neighborhood that you're in. But during the daytime, totally safe in most parts of the U.S. Even in New York. Yeah, crime. There is crime, but it's I wouldn't say it's a huge problem at the moment. In Cambodia, again, getting around, no problem. Daytime, totally safe. You can get around just fine. Nighttime, generally, women in Cambodia prefer to drive either in groups or they'll have a male friend drive with them to drive them home.
Okay.
So driving by yourself, they don't really do it. I personally don't see it. Although I can't really speak as a woman, so I haven't heard of a lot of crime recently, so I can't really say. It seems fairly safe to me, but I would probably be a bad person to judge that. I just know the habits of women. They generally at nighttime they prefer to go in groups or have a male friend accompany them to drop them off at their house. So they'll drive their own moto, and then their guy friend will just follow them behind on their own moto, make sure they get home okay, and then the guy will drive by himself. For guys, though, it's generally safe to drive around at night. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting.
What about Mika? Do you have any question to ask?
I do not. I haven't had my coffee yet. My brain's not totally working.
I understand. Okay, so our time is up. I am very grateful for you guys for joining and sharing your knowledge related to transportation system in your country. And thank you for sharing your precious time.
Thank you for having me. And it was very nice to meet you, Mika.
Nice to meet you too, Zeldine.
Zeldine, yes.
Zeldine.
Okay.
Yes. It's a confusing name. It's not very easy.
It looks like a German name, Zedline Van Der Straat.
Like a Dutch, right?
Yeah, I guess it's Dutch. I've never really met anyone with the same name as me, but there are a lot of South African women. Well, not a lot, but there are quite a few South African women with the name. Apparently, it's a French name, though.
It's French? Von?
Yeah.
Von sounds yeah.
Oh, Van
Dutch
Straten, that is South African. It's Dutch, but yeah.
Oh, Zeldine. You mean Zeldine. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Zeldine is French, supposedly.
I see. Okay, I can see that would be French. Von Straten sounds very you say it's Dutch, sounds German to me. I think of like the evil villains whenever I have Von Straten.
Yeah.
The arch nemesis.
I think it means from the street. Van Straten. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Fascinating surname.
You guys speak Dutch?